The BBC News at 9, now on BBC One with Peter Sissons.
Africa's AIDS epidemic, a drugs breakthrough gives hope to the children. It's cheap and it could halve the numbers born infected. Salvaging the peace process, Molam insists the Good Friday Agreement is intact. And long-term health care, good news for some, but many will still have to pay. Good evening. In the life-or-death battle against Africa's AIDS epidemic, a ray of hope. Researchers in the United States and Uganda have identified a cheap and effective drug which could control the spread of the disease by preventing up to 400,000 children each year being born with it. As the 9 o'clock news has reported this week, AIDS is spreading at an alarming rate throughout sub-Saharan Africa, with the disease frequently passed on by a mother to her unborn child. The new drug is said to reduce the chance of that happening by up to 50%, and it costs just a few pounds a dose.
Each day, 1,800 babies in developing countries are born with the AIDS virus. They get it from their mothers. There are ways of reducing the risk of transmission, but, as reported on the 9 o'clock news last night, the treatments are too expensive for the countries in sub-Saharan Africa. The most common drug, AZT, costs £160 for a short course. But researchers working at the Malago Hospital in Kampala have now found that a drug costing £2.50 is more effective.
These findings are important because this really is the first regimen, we believe, that will be able to be implemented in a developing country because of its very low cost and safety.
300 women with HIV took the drug Nevarapin just before labour. Their newborn babies were also given a small dose. After 16 weeks, 13% of the Nevarapin babies had the virus. Another group of women were given AZT. 25% of the AZT babies were found to have HIV after 16 weeks. Because the drug is so cheap, researchers believe it to be the best hope of developing a treatment that can be widely used. Some believe that it could prevent up to 400,000 newborns from beginning their lives infected with HIV.
The major goal must be to prevent infection in women. But once a woman is infected, this will have a profound impact on the HIV infection in children, which is a real problem, a major problem in developing countries.
In the hardest hit parts of sub-Saharan Africa, up to a third of pregnant women have HIV, and a third of their children will be born with the virus. Despite this, many infected women continue to have children.
There's so much pressure from the culture to have children, and a woman is not complete until she's born children. So even if this woman is HIV infected, she would want to have children. And the option that Nevarapin is able to provide is that if she does get pregnant and she's HIV infected, there's a 50% chance that her child will not be infected if she takes the Nevarapin.
AZT is more effective if used over a longer treatment period, but because of its cost, the best hope for many African nations is a short course with a new drug. If it's as effective as researchers believe, it could spare the next generation from the horrors of HIV. Khaled Ghosh, BBC News.
Political leaders in Northern Ireland have been holding separate meetings with ministers at Stormont after yesterday's failure to set up a power-sharing executive. Sinn Féin's President, Gerry Adams, warned that no one should underestimate the seriousness of the situation. The Ulster Unionist leader, David Trimble, called for talks with the other parties. Our Ireland correspondent, David Eads, reports.
It all collapsed on Thursday, but it's Friday now. Hope springs eternal in Northern Ireland, and Belfast Evening Paper has tried to put the latest problems into context with its own sense of reality.
This has certainly been a setback, and everyone accepts that. But on the other hand, we've got to look at what Northern Ireland is like this summer. It's a fairly normal place to live. Indeed, I've been a journalist here for 30 years or so, and I can't recall a more peaceful summer, and I hope, of course, it will continue despite what's happened this week.
Not all the parties are so upbeat. After talks with government ministers today, Gerry Adams underlined the extent of the damage done in language which might once have been taken as a warning.
none of us should underestimate, as people absorb what is happening and what has happened, the import and the seriousness of the phase of the process, of the chapter which closed yesterday.
His anger was directed, not surprisingly, at David Trimble, still First Minister of the Executive he helped to sink. He wants the parties, not the government, to lead the review and to concentrate on one area.
We want something that is focused on the key issues that have caused the difficulties, primarily on decommissioning and also on the question of devolution.
Familiar topics for a weary Seamus Mallon, the man who resigned as Deputy First Minister yesterday, hoping Mr Trimble would follow suit. But on the Protestant Shankill Road in Belfast, Mr Trimble's stand has done him no harm.
We don't agree with that agreement whatsoever. Terrorists in the government? Not at all.
It's a far cry from the mood in this newly reopened market hall opposite one main Republican estate.
There'll never be any change, no matter how long it goes on. They can't agree among themselves, so why continue it? Call it all a halt.
It's the parties linked to the paramilitaries which appear most aggrieved by the events of this week. The talking now is not even about the peace process, it's about the review, what it will cover, when it will start, who will run it. Getting a deal on that lot will be hard enough. Little wonder then that the people of Northern Ireland tend these days to carry on regardless. David Eads, BBC News, Belfast.
A severely disabled woman who sued her local health authority after it tried to move her into a private nursing home has won her case at the Court of Appeal. The judges said North and East Devon Health Authority were wrong to try to make her leave a free NHS home. But the court also said that people with less complex needs could still be required to contribute towards their nursing.
Pamela Coghlan was quietly celebrating in her garden today. She'd been promised this would be her home for life. And today the Court of Appeal said that promise must be kept. Her local health authority had wanted to close Marden House in Exeter. They said she had to move to a private nursing home. Now she just wants to say thank you to those who've helped her.
The brilliant lawyers, they understand the justice and the humanity of the situation, and our judges who have also seen it.
Her lawyer said the health authority had abused its power. Pamela Coghlan had won against the odds.
It's been a very long, hard fight. She sunk her own savings into the legal cost of this case, and today the health authority has been ordered to pay the whole cost of the proceedings because they were found to be in violation of the European Convention on Human Rights.
But the Court of Appeal also ruled that nursing is not the sole responsibility of the NHS. So although Pamela Coghlan won her case, and although the government will have to produce clearer guidance, today's judgment means that social services will still be able to go on charging better off patients for their nursing home care. And that was good news for the Health Secretary. He believes any new guidance on long-term care will mean little change.
There will be a limited number of people who will be eligible for more financial help, but that won't be a large number, and it's only fair and just that they should be properly looked after.
But all this leaves confusion about what care the health service should provide free and what should be charged for. And it will be a bitter disappointment to many paying hefty fees in nursing homes. All this was supposed to be sorted out by a Royal Commission appointed by the government. It recommended that all nursing care should be free, as well as services such as washing and dressing. But 4 months on, ministers have still to respond, and tonight the Commission chairman criticised the delay.
We spent a whole year consulting. I don't know who they're talking to now. There's been no indication of that, and if it's just a matter of political advisors who didn't seem to like what we were doing, continuing to make noise about it, that would be most disappointing.
There, look, see that little tiny bit there?
While the elderly and disabled wait, all the signs are the government does not intend to go for expensive solutions. Free care for all looks set to remain just a dream. Neil Dixon, BBC News.
After weeks of denial, Pakistan has admitted its troops did enter the Indian section of Kashmir during the recent fighting there. Previously, Pakistan insisted the incursions were made only by Islamic fighters. But Pakistan's top general has told the 9 o'clock news that some of his patrols crossed the line of control that divides the disputed territory. The Pakistani-backed forces are now pulling back from Kargil, where the fiercest clashes took place.
The countdown is nearly over to the deadline for the pullout, and on the Pakistan side, this artillery unit, manning its veteran British guns, is still on high alert in case the present truce breaks down. India and Pakistan are extricating themselves from their worst conflict in 3 decades. It erupted after India accused Pakistan of sending Kashmiri militants and its own troops across the line of control. The two nations have argued bitterly over the role played by the Pakistani forces. Today, arriving for a visit to the front line with the Prime Minister, Pakistan's army chief admitted that they had crossed the line of control on occasion, but he claimed to keep Indian forces at bay.
There was definitely, within this issue of activity on the line of control, aggressive patrolling done by our troops, and that took them across to make sure that we have our eyes and ears open before any action takes place on the line of control.
Here his troops are still eyeball to eyeball with India's hillside bunkers.
Barely a couple of days ago, this was still one of the most tense places in the world, and the frequency of firing across the line of control meant that it would have been impossible even to risk standing here. But the question being asked now on both sides of the line is whether this is only a respite and whether there will be more Kargils.
Indian troops today at one of the positions recovered from the Pakistani-backed forces. Pakistan has had to back down, and its Prime Minister has faced another tough battle trying to convince his people the cost was justified.
It is not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult because the wounds are very fresh and a lot of lives have been lost on both sides unnecessarily. I mean, people have... so it has been in a way a great disaster.
The shelled and deserted villages here in Pakistan-administered Kashmir are a mirror image of those on the other side of the line of control. In refugee camps, the fear of shelling remains, with rocks serving as bunkers. She says she won't return home until she's sure the fighting is over. The coming days will provide the answer. But the solution to 50 years of troubled history in Kashmir and peace for this generation looks no nearer after this return to battle. Mike Wooldridge, BBC News, on the line of control.
Here, the Press Complaints Commission has upheld a complaint by the Prime Minister against the Mail on Sunday. The newspaper had suggested that Tony Blair's daughter received special treatment when she won a place at a school in West London.
The Sacred Heart High School in Hammersmith is 6 miles from Downing Street, but the Complaints Commission said there was no evidence Catherine Blair got her place here as a result of special treatment. The paper's articles accused the school of operating an under-the-counter policy of selection. The Commission said it could have made that accusation without mentioning Catherine. The Blairs said the paper breached the newspaper code, which bans stories about children simply because their parents are famous. The Commission agreed. Its decision was welcomed by an MP who's long campaigned for a privacy law.
Firstly, no child should go to school with a false rumour running around, fed by the press, saying that she's only there because of preferential treatment. That story was untrue. Secondly, because it's a warning to all editors to treat children with care.
The Mail on Sunday argued throughout that the story was in the public interest. In a statement, it said its articles raised important issues about Labour's education policies. We defended them, it said, because we strongly believe that the press should be free to report such matters. The Commission says newspapers are free to write about politicians' children when it's justified. On this occasion, it's clear the Commission chose to side with the Blairs rather than with the newspaper, which was effectively accusing them of hypocrisy. Nick Hyam, BBC News, at the Press Complaints Commission.
The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak has said that he's prepared to make compromises in order to achieve a lasting peace in the Middle East. Mr. Barak is currently in the United States, where he's holding a series of meetings with President Clinton and his staff. Meanwhile, speaking in Gaza, the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat said he hoped formal talks with Israel could be renewed by the end of the month. United Nations weapons inspectors have returned to Iraq. They're due to start removing items the Iraqis say are dangerous, which were left behind when they flew out last year. The team members have been allowed back in on condition that they're independent and have no connection with UNSCOM, the inspection group which the Iraqi authorities previously accused of spying. Ibrahim Rugova, the moderate ethnic Albanian leader who claims to be Kosovo's legitimate president, has boycotted the first meeting of the province's advisory council. Mr. Rugova said he was unhappy with the makeup of the UN-sponsored council, which is supposed to be setting up institutions for local autonomy in the province. A month after NATO forces entered Kosovo, there are growing signs that ordinary Serbs are turning against President Milosevic. During the bombing, they rallied behind him, but since then there have been protest rallies across Yugoslavia. So far, they haven't spread to the capital Belgrade, but as our diplomatic correspondent Brian Hanrahan reports, all that could soon change.
Belgrade is still betting on horses rather than the government's survival. The capital seems strangely distracted from the gathering political crisis, and yet it's here that President Milosevic's future will be determined. For the moment, though, life is relaxed, rather pleasant. The opposition campaign hasn't reached here yet, and the government has shielded the city from the worst effects of the war.
2.5 million people live in Belgrade, and they are very worried about Belgrade. In a week or two, maybe a month, it will be the biggest protest in Belgrade.
Public opinion pollster Sevabran Brankovic says his result shows support for President Milosevic is dropping rapidly, even among his hardcore supporters. From its wartime peak of 29%, his rating slid to 21% when the war ended, and is down to 17% this week. People want change, but they don't trust the opposition to deliver it.
All opposition leaders have very bad rating. If they want to do something, they must withdraw and they must be replaced with some new people who are not compromised like they.
For opposition politicians, street rallies are the only chance they get to talk directly to the public. They're excluded from state television and subject to a continuous critical commentary. But the impression they leave in these comparatively small demonstrations will take a long time to disseminate. Without media access, the opposition are hamstrung. Radio Pančevo, near Belgrade, is one of a handful of independent stations left. Most of the rest were shut down during the war. And as it reports the voice of the protesters, it's coming under heavy pressure. The state wants to keep control of information. The state media produce only a fragmented and distorted view of the opposition, and it leaves public opinion confused and uncertain about who to back. So the opposition, instead of projecting a positive alternative, are having to build a coalition of the discontented. It's the slow route to a revolution. Brian Hanrahan, BBC News, Radio Pančevo.
The Health Secretary, Frank Dobson, has announced details of new walk-in health centres. They offer free access to NHS doctors and nurses without appointment until late at night.
This health centre at Soho in central London is the model and inspiration behind the new walk-in clinics. Patients working in the West End can just turn up with no appointment and have minor injuries dealt with by a nurse, who can also prescribe antibiotics and painkillers.
I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't get into the local hospital, and I certainly couldn't go all the way home to my home, which is about 10 miles away. So I could walk across the road into the centre, and I was seen within 5 minutes.
All 19 walk-in centres in England will be open from early till late, 7 days a week. But the nurses won't have access to patients' medical records. So won't some people try to get drugs their own doctor won't give them?
We follow the same clinical procedures and ways that the GPs would, and people who are trying to get things out of us because they didn't get it out of a GP will not do so. We ask them their past medical history. Now, it's obviously up to them if they're going to give it very detailed, but if we think there's something going on behind, we can also dig further.
Just do a Wednesday morning, but it's pretty booked this week.
You might think overworked GPs would welcome anything which would take pressure off them, but doctors' leaders say walk-in health centres are untried and untested and could simply encourage patients to use the NHS unnecessarily.
I think we have to realise that there is only just so much money to go round in the NHS, and I think there is a risk that these walk-in centres will shift the investment of money from the urgent and serious to the relatively trivial.
But the government says they will offer healthcare to the public when and where they need it, like at this supermarket in Norwich, to match hectic modern lifestyles. Doctors' leaders are wary of walk-in centres like this because they're largely run by nurses and they fear losing part of their power base. But anything which makes it easier to get treated will prove very popular with patients, so there's likely to be many more of these set up in the coming year. Fergus Walsh, BBC News, at the Soho Centre in London's West End.
Several states across America are building special prisons for geriatrics because so many criminals there are being given life sentences with no chance of parole. It's a problem that's hardly been addressed in Britain, although we also have a growing population of ageing prisoners and some notorious inmates, including Myra Hindley, Rosemary West and Peter Sutcliffe, who've been told they'll never be released.
This is Leonard Harvey. He's 65. He's been in prison for 34 years for killing 2 toddlers, one of them his own son. His days are now spent keeping his home clean, and home, probably until he dies, is Laurel Highlands Prison. But this is no ordinary prison.
The staff treat you like, we know who you are, Mr. Harvey, but we don't look down on you because of what, your crime may be or who you are. You are a person, you are a human being.
It's unrecognizable as a prison. Many of its once hardened criminals are too old or infirm to pose any risk. Chronically sick, terminally ill or disabled by gunshot wounds, the law says they must still serve their time. In Pennsylvania, they do it in this specialist geriatric and long-term care unit. More than 20 years ago, Regis Mannion was given a life sentence for murdering his wife. Now 75, he can walk no more than a few steps. But all his medical needs are catered for here.
I get anything wrong, the doctors, there are 2 or 3 doctors that are there and they're looking around this way. I get a thorough exam, maybe an hour and a half long.
This prison even has its own dialysis unit.
Are you having any cramping in your leg?
No.
So many inmates have abused their bodies with drink or drugs that it's cheaper than sending them to local hospitals. 5 years ago, geriatric prisons like this were unheard of in America. Even now, as the elderly are committing more crimes and sentences are getting longer, only a few states have them. But the need for special facilities for the old and infirm isn't in doubt. In Pennsylvania alone, more than 100 inmates have been waiting for 3 years for a bed here in Laurel Highlands. And not because it's a way out. This is still very much a prison.
These people are still inmates. They still have a debt to society to pay, and that is an amount of their time that they're doing for their crimes. Because of that, this institution is a prison, but a hospital setting to care for those people in their needs.
20 years ago, there were 6,000 elderly inmates in America. Now there are 50,000. In another 5 years, there could be 70,000. The aging inmate is now on the American political agenda, but it's an issue Britain, with its much smaller but rapidly growing elderly jail population, has so far failed to address. Jane Peel, BBC News, Pennsylvania.
At the halfway stage in the 128th Open Golf Championship at Carnoustie, a relatively unknown Frenchman, Jean van der Velde, heads the leaderboard. But even he hasn't managed to get his score below par on what's proving to be the toughest Open for years. Van der Velde is 1 over, Argentina's Angel Cabrera is 2 over, Jesper Parnevik of Sweden 3 over.
For Greg Norman, twice an Open champion, the second round could not have started better as he raced up the leaderboard to joint first place.
He's making his move.
Then the toughest hole on the course, the 17th, showed how Carnoustie has earned its reputation. Norman, just a few feet from the fairway, took 2 attempts to get the ball out of the now infamous rough. When he did finally succeed, he merely struck the ball across the course into even more trouble. It destroyed his chances of the outright lead, and he wasn't impressed.
What can you do about it? I mean, the way the golf course is set up, to have rough that thick, 9 feet off the fairway on a hole that long, I mean, I just don't see the justification in it. It was just brutal. It was thick, gnarly. You know, you couldn't ever see the bottom of the ball. I couldn't see the ball, to tell you the truth.
Even the world #1 Tiger Woods had his fair share of problems, although it didn't stop him moving into a strong position. But the surprise leader so far is Frenchman Jean Van der Velde, who hit the lowest round of the championship.
It's a very tough course, and you need to make a lot of good two-putts, and that's what I'm trying to concentrate on, and that's it, you know.
Colin Montgomery will be disappointed with his performance today, but he still has an outside chance of catching the leaders.
He's pulled it sort of aggressively.
The Argentinian Angel Cabrera is an unlikely second at the moment, but his final putt on the 18th restored everyone's faith in nature. Any one of at least a dozen leading players could still realistically challenge for the Open title in the next 2 days. The bad news for all concerned is that the weather forecast for tomorrow is gloomy. Paul Newman, BBC News, Carnoustie.
And the main news tonight, a drugs breakthrough promises hope for the children infected in Africa's AIDS epidemic. It's cheap, and it could halve the numbers born with the disease. And that's all from the newsroom tonight. Good night.